everyone. I'm going to pick up where we left off in our Land of Stories, The Wishing Spell. So Alex and Connor have just discovered that they have actually fallen into the Land of Stories. So let's see what happens next. Alex handed Connor the wanted poster and he read it. His eyes grew as wide as a lemur's. No, no, no. This cannot be happening. This is crazy, he said, shaking his head. He handed the poster back to his sister as if it were infected with rabies. He couldn't believe what she was saying. He didn't want to believe what she was saying. Are you telling me we're in the fairy tale world? I'd recognize this forest anywhere. It's straight out of Grandma's book, Alex said with an unplanned smile. But it makes perfect sense. Where else would it have taken us? We just fell through a book. Nothing makes sense, Connor said. So are we stuck here or what? How do we get home? I don't have all of your answers, Connor, Alex said. Don't forget, all of this just happened to me too. Connor began pacing around the trees with his hands on his hips. I can't believe I ditched detention and wound up in another dimension, he said. Alex was rather grateful her brother had come after her. They had lived together all their lives and had been in the same classroom since kindergarten. She didn't know if she could handle being in a different dimension by herself. I hope you're happy, Alex, Connor said. I told you we should have thrown that book into the creek. Enough with the blaming, Alex said. It doesn't matter how we got here. The point is we're here now. What matters is finding someone who can help us get home. Excuse me, may I help you? Said a proper voice behind the twins. They jolted at the sound of another voice besides their own. They turned around to see who it had come from, and once they saw, they both wished they hadn't. Standing behind Alex and Connor was what could best be described as a frog man. He was tall with a wide face, big glossy eyes, and shiny green skin. He wore a dapper three-piece suit and carried a large glass of lily pads. Forgive me for eavesdropping, but I'm rather good with directions if you need some, he said with a very wide smile. Alex and Connor were so petrified that they were paralyzed. If they needed any more evidence that they were in the fairy tale world, this was their proof. You look awfully young to be in the forest by yourselves, the frogman said. Are you lost? Connor let out a high-pitched squeal that lasted much longer than it should have. Please don't eat us, he said, and dropped to the ground in a fetal position. The frogman looked down at him with a frown. Young man, I have no intention of eating you, he said. Is he always like this? The frogman asked Alex. Alex responded with a squeal almost identical to the one her brother had made. I know, don't worry. I'm used to people screaming at me, the frogman told them. Get it out of your systems. The shock will only last a minute. We're sorry, Alex finally managed to say. It's just that, where we're from, there aren't many, frog people? Sorry if that isn't the politically correct term for what you are. Connor let out another high-pitched noise. It wasn't a scream this time, but it was embarrassing nonetheless. The frogman studied their faces and paid special attention to their clothes. Where exactly are you from? Pretty far from here, Alex said. A piercing set of wolf howls echoed through the forest. All three of them jumped at the sound. The frogman looked around the trees with fear in his big glossy eyes. It's getting dark, the frogman said. We better get inside. Please, follow me home. It's just a few minutes' walk from here. Nice try, Connor said. The wolf howls echoed again. This time they were much louder than the first. Wherever the wolves were, they were getting closer. I know I look scary now, said the frogman to the twins, but I'm nothing compared to some of the creatures that lurk around these woods at night. I promise I will not harm you. There was such concern in his eyes, it was hard not to trust him. The frogman took off at a brisk walk deeper into the forest. Alex nudged Connor. We better follow him. Are you crazy? I'm not going home with the giant frog, Connor whispered to her. What do we have to lose? Alex asked. Besides our lives, Connor said. But despite his protest, he was dragged up by his sister and pulled in the direction the frogman was leading them. The twins hurried behind the frogman for a good while. They zigzagged between trees and jumped over boulders and tree roots that stuck up from the ground. The boulders and tree roots that stuck up. The deeper they went into the forest, the thicker the trees became. It got dark very quickly and was almost pitch black by the time they reached the frogman's home. Alex and Connor stayed close together. With every step, they second-guessed if they had made a smart choice going with this strange creature. This way, he said. The frogman brushed aside some dead vines growing over a large wooden door that was camouflaged into the side of a small hill. He pulled the door open and led the hesitant twins underground. He looked back into the forest, making sure they hadn't been followed, before shutting the door behind him. It was very dark underground. Alex and Connor were so close together they could have been mistaken for Siamese twins. "Forgive the mess, I wasn't expecting company," the frogman apologized, and lit a lamp with a match. Alex and Connor didn't know what to expect of the frogman's home, but what they were seeing definitely wasn't it. They were in a large room with dirt walls and a low dirt ceiling. Roots from a tree growing above them grew down like a chandelier. A cluster of big, cushy chairs and sofas, many of the cushions had the stuffing sticking out of them, sat in the center of the room and were angled to face a small fireplace. Nearby, teacups and pots hung from the hooks over a tiny kitchenette. To Alex's delight, there were books everywhere. Shelves of books lined the dirt walls, piles of books were stacked on every available surface, and on the ground, it was as if the room were infested with literature. "Connor," Alex whispered close to him, "look around at this place. It's like we're having our own Lucy and Mr. Tummis moment." Connor looked around and saw what she meant. "If he offers us Turkish delight, I don't care what you say. We're getting out of here," he whispered back. "It's a little dirty, but it's cozy," the frogman said. "It's hard to find a landlord who will house a frog, so I did the best I could with what I had." He placed his jar of lily pads on the mantel and immediately started a fire in the fireplace. He filled a tea kettle with water from a pitcher, placed it over the fire, and took a seat in a big white chair closest to it. He crossed his legs and folded his hands neatly in his lap. He was one proper frog. "Please have a seat," the frogman said, gesturing to the sofa in front of him. The twins reluctantly did as he asked. The sofa was rather lumpy, so they had to shift around in their seats to get comfortable. "What are you?" Connor asked the frog. "Connor, don't be rude," said his sister, elbowing him in the side. "It's quite all right," the frogman said, with a complacent smile. "I understand my appearance takes some time to get used to. Even I haven't fully adapted to it." "You mean you weren't always frog person?" Alex asked as politely as she could. "Heavens, no," the frogman said. "I was cursed years ago by a very aggressive witch." "Why?" Alex asked. She was fascinated by how casually he had said it. "To teach me a lesson, I suppose," the frogman told her. "I used to be a very vain young man. The witch transformed my appearance so I would lose all the things I took for granted." His wide smile softly faded. It had obviously been a very long and painful experience for him, and he still had a sad sense of loss and longing about him. The twins had never seen a frog look so sad. "I can't imagine what that must have been like," said Alex, beaming with sympathy. "Can we call you Froggy?" Connor asked with a small smirk. "Connor?" Alex reprimanded. "It's quite all right," the frogman nodded, and his smile returned. "I've learned that the more people embrace their disadvantages, the less disadvantaged they become. Please call me Froggy. I prefer it." Connor shrugged and smiled. Now I'm going to stop there. See you later. Bye.